The sky above Earth burned like an ocean of fire. Ships moved across the clouds, their engines glowing red as they fought through the smoke. The Dominion fleet had arrived, filling orbit with metal and flame. To them, Earth was only one more world to conquer. They did not understand what kind of people lived there. Commander Rian stood inside the control deck of the Terran, flagship Valor. The ship trembled with every impact. Sparks jumped from broken panels, and the air smelled of ozone and burning plastic. Around him, his crew worked in silence. Their faces were tired, but their eyes were sharp. They had no fear left, only determination. "Report," Rian said, keeping his voice calm. "Shield power at 30%, sir. We have lost contact with Luna Base. The Dominion fleet has split into 3 wings. They are trying to surround us," replied the young officer Mira, her hands moving fast over the console. Rian looked at the holographic display. Red enemy icons filled the map like a swarm. The human fleet was smaller, older, and damaged. They had no reinforcements. Every ally had fallen silent. Earth stood alone now. "Then we stop them here," Rian said. His voice was quiet, but it carried strength. In orbit, hundreds of human ships turned as one. The Terran defense fleet had once been built for exploration and peacekeeping. Now, every vessel carried weapons and scars. The Dominion thought this battle would end quickly. They believed humans would surrender. It's like so many others before them. They were wrong. From the surface, Earth's defense stations came alive. Massive cannons hidden under mountains rose from their silos. Energy beams cut through the sky, tearing into enemy cruisers. The night turned bright as fire fell from orbit. Inside the cities, civilians watched from shelters, hearing the rumble above. Every person knew what was happening. Every person had a reason to stand firm. Families who had lost loved ones in the first attacks sent messages to the fleet. Some sent prayers, others sent songs. Across all networks, one message repeated again and again. "Hold the line. Do not fall." In space, the Valor charged forward. Rian's fleet moved into formation, forming a wall of ships around Earth. The Dominion's flagship, a massive dreadnought named Vraxon, opened fire. Its cannons released waves of plasma that tore through 3 Terran frigates. The shock shook the Valor. Throwing some crew members to the floor, "Target the dreadnought's forward guns," Rian ordered. "But sir, our main weapon needs time to charge," said Mira. "Then buy it that time," Rian said firmly. "We fight for our home. Every second we stand is one more breath for Earth." The Terran ships turned their weapons on the enemy. Missiles streaked across the blackness, followed by beams of pure light. Human ships darted between larger enemy vessels, striking fast, using courage and instinct where the Dominion used only cold command. For hours, the battle raged. The Dominion kept sending more ships. Each time, humanity met them with fire. The orbit around Earth filled with debris, broken holes, and silent wrecks. But even as their numbers thinned, the humans did not retreat. On the Valor, Mira's hands shook as she tried to stabilize power. "We are losing reactors on the lower decks," she said. Rian placed a hand on her shoulder. "We hold the line," he said again. His words were simple, but they carried weight that filled the room. Another explosion rocked the ship. Lights flickered. Through the window, Rian saw the curve of Earth below, half in light, half in darkness. He thought of the people down there. He thought of his mother, who had once told him, "If you protect others, you never die forgotten." "Main cannon ready," said an engineer. Rian looked at the display. The Vraxon was turning its guns toward the Pacific defense grid. If that station fell, Earth would be open to orbital fire. He gave the order. Fire. The Valor's main cannon charged, the light inside the ship glowing white. Then a beam burst out, cutting across space like a blade. It struck the Vraxon right in the center, piercing through armor and fuel lines. The explosion filled the sky, turning night into day. The Dominion's flagship broke apart, its burning fragments falling toward the atmosphere. Cheers filled the Terran fleet. Across all channels, voices shouted in joy and disbelief. Humanity had destroyed the enemy's command ship. But Rian knew the battle was not over. "Do not celebrate yet," he said. "They will come again." He was right. Moments later, new enemy signals appeared on the radar. Reinforcements were arriving from the dark side of the moon. The Dominion had sent an entire armada. Mira turned to him. "Sir, we cannot win this." Rian looked at her and smiled faintly. "We already have. Every hour we stand, every ship we save, shows them who we are. They may destroy our ships, but they will never break our spirit." The fleet reformed. Damaged ships linked shields together, covering each other. Fighters launched from every hangar. The humans used every weapon, every trick, every bit of courage they had left. They fought not for glory, but for survival, for home, for each other. When the Dominion fleet entered the atmosphere to attack the ground directly, the humans changed tactics. They guided their broken ships downward, using them as shields for cities. Some captains rammed their damaged vessels into enemy carriers, sacrificing themselves to take the invaders down. On the ground, soldiers and civilians joined the defense. Energy turrets on rooftops opened fire. Mechs marched through burning streets, protecting the evacuation lines. Children hid under shelters, listening to the sound of thunder above. And through all of it, Earth's people refused to surrender. After 3 long days, the Dominion Command realized something terrible. For every city they struck, humans rebuilt. For every ship they destroyed, 3 more appeared from hidden docks. Every soldier fought until the end, and every death only made the others fight harder. At last, the Dominion fleet began to retreat. Their losses were massive. Their commanders could not understand why the humans kept fighting when the odds were so hopeless. No other species had ever resisted this long. Rian watched from the Valar as the enemy ships jumped away. His ship was in ruins, half its systems dead, but it still floated above the blue planet. The crew around him was silent. Some cried, some smiled weakly. "They are leaving," Mira said softly. Rian nodded. "Let them go. They will remember this day." The message spread across every Terran channel. The battle was over. Earth had survived. The price was high. Millions were lost. Cities were gone, but humanity had stood firm. The Dominion had been defeated for the first time in history. Rian walked to the viewport and looked down at Earth. The clouds were stained with the light of war. But beneath them, life still moved. Fires would fade. Wounds would heal. The people would rise again. Later that night, as the fleet drifted in orbit, Rian sent a message to all Terran ships. His voice was calm, tired, but filled with pride. "This victory's not mine," he said. "It belongs to every man, woman, and child who refused to kneel. We fought not because we wanted to rule, but because we wanted to live free. The Dominion will return one day. When they do, they will remember what they saw here. They will remember that Earth stands united." Across the fleet, survivors listened in silence. Some wept quietly. Others raised their hands in salute. Rian turned off the comms and looked once more at the planet he had sworn to protect. The sky outside was filled with drifting wrecks and shattered ships, but to him, it was beautiful. It was proof that humanity could face the darkness and not fall. Far away, in the cold halls of the Dominion capital, the news spread like wildfire. Their commanders argued in disbelief. How could a single planet resist their might? How could a young race of fragile creatures break their fleets? The answer was simple: because humans fought with heart. They fought for home, for love, and for each other. In the years that followed, the story of Earth's stand became legend. Traders whispered it in distant ports. Soldiers from other worlds repeated it as a warning and as a promise. They said, "Do not challenge the world that fought the Dominion. Do not face the people who refuse to kneel. To stand with Earth is to never be forgotten." And though the fires had burned cities to ash, the light of that victory never faded. It became a flame in the hearts of all who believed in courage, unity, and hope. For humanity, it was not just survival. It was a promise that no matter how dark the galaxy became, Earth would always stand. The war was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the battles themselves. The stars around Earth were quiet now, no longer flashing with fire and destruction. The Dominion fleet had been pushed back beyond the outer colonies, their pride shattered, but they were not gone. Everyone knew they were only waiting for time and strength to return. Humanity had survived, yet survival had a cost that could not be counted in numbers. Commander Rian stood at the window of the orbital command station. The planet below still showed its scars. Great patches of land were blackened, oceans shimmered with strange colors, and entire cities were gone. From this height, Earth looked peaceful, but Rian knew the truth. Every light on the surface represented lives trying to rebuild. Hands working day and night to repair what had been broken. It had been 5 years since the endless battle for Earth. Rian was older now, his hair touched with gray. His uniform was faded and his eyes carried memories of fire. He had refused promotions and medals. He said often the war was won by everyone, not by one man. Instead, he worked quietly, helping guide the rebuilding of the fleet and the planet. Humanity had changed. Before the war, they had dreamed of exploration, of reaching new stars and discovering wonders. After the war, they dreamed of safety, of strength, of never being weak again. Every city had turned its factories toward defense. Every school taught not only history and science, but the lesson of unity. People remembered the day the sky burned and swore it would never happen again. On the moon. Shipyards spread like silver forests. New battleships were being built, faster and stronger than before. The designs were simple, but efficient. The engineers called them guardians. Each one carried the name of a fallen city or hero. Every time one was launched, people gathered to watch, saluting the memory of those who had stood when all seemed lost. But not everyone saw the future the same way. Some wanted to explore again, to rebuild the dream of reaching the stars for peace, not war. One of them was Mira, the young officer who had once served under Rian. She had grown into a strong leader, commanding a small fleet that patrolled the outer colonies. Mira believed humanity could not live in fear forever. When she visited Earth for the first time in years, she found Rian standing by the same window where he had once watched the battle. She saluted him, but he only smiled. "You still look for the stars?" he said. "Yes, sir," she answered. "I believe they still hold friends, not only enemies." Rian looked thoughtful. "Maybe you are right. But friends can forget you when the war is over, and we must remind them," Mira said softly. Her words stayed with him long after she left. While Earth rebuilt, messages came from far systems. The smaller races who had once fought beside humanity during the war sent their thanks. Some offered resources, others sent scientists or healers. They spoke of how humanity's courage had inspired them to rise against their own oppressors. One message came from the small planet Thren, a world rich in forests and rivers. The people of Thren had hidden human refugees during the darkest days of the war. They now sent a gift, a small crystal that glowed with inner light. Their message said, "To the people of Earth, who stood when all else fell, may this light remind you that you are never alone." Rian kept that crystal on his desk. Its glow reminded him that not every part of the galaxy had turned cold. Years passed. The Terran Alliance was formed, a union of humans and the smaller races that had fought together. It was not a great empire, but it was strong and fair. They shared technology, trade, and defense. Yet Earth remained its heart. Every council meeting began with the same oath: "We stand together because Earth once stood alone." Despite this unity, the galaxy was changing again. Far from the known systems, the Dominion was rebuilding. Reports came from traders and explorers. New fleets were being seen near the outer borders, silent and organized. No one wanted another war, but everyone felt it coming. One evening, as Rian reviewed reports in his office, an old friend entered. Admiral Chen, who had commanded the Southern Fleet during the war, stood by the door. "They are watching us again," Chen said. "I know," Rian replied. "What will we do when they return?" "The same thing we did before. Stand." Chen nodded. "You think they will come soon?" Rian's eyes turned to the window where the blue curve of Earth glowed softly in the dark. "Soon or later, it does not matter. We will be ready." Down on the surface, life moved on. Children played in parks rebuilt on the ashes of battlefields. Farmers grew crops where craters once lay. New cities rose, taller and brighter than before. People no longer looked at the stars with fear, but with quiet pride. They knew their ancestors had protected the sky. They would do the same in schools. Students learned about the battle for Earth as the moment when humanity earned its place among the stars. They watched old recordings of the Valar firing on the Dominion dreadnought. They listened to Rion's speech, the one he had sent to all Terran ships after the battle. His words had become part of their identity. But not all the lessons were of war. Teachers reminded the young that victory was not about destruction, but about unity. They taught that courage was not only found in battle, but in rebuilding, in helping others, in keeping hope alive. In one of those schools, a boy named Leo dreamed of becoming a pilot. His father had died in the war, but his mother told him stories of bravery and kindness. Every night, he looked at the stars through a small telescope and whispered, "Someday, I will protect them too." Leo's dream was shared by many. Humanity's next generation grew up not in the shadow of fear, but in the light of purpose. They wanted to explore again, to see the worlds beyond the scars of war, and they would soon have their chance. Because while Earth rebuilt in silence, distant signals began to appear again, calls for help, whispers of conflict and strange new empires rising in the outer rim. The peace was not permanent, but humanity had learned patience. They did not rush into battles anymore. They watched, listened, and prepared. By the 20th year after the war, Earth's fleet had doubled in size. The Guardians now patrolled not only near home, but across the Alliance territories. Each captain carried Rion's code: protect the innocent. Stand beside your allies and never start a war you cannot end. Rion himself finally retired, though he never left service completely. He spent his last years teaching at the academy, sharing his wisdom with young officers. Mira visited often, seeking his advice. She had become one of the most respected commanders in the fleet, known for her calm leadership and sharp mind. One day, during a quiet evening, Rion told her something that would stay with her forever. War is not only fought with guns, he said. Sometimes the greatest battles are fought in silence and patience, in rebuilding, in kindness. Remember that, Mira. The galaxy will forget our weapons before it forgets our mercy. He passed away that same year, buried with honors on Earth's surface. His grave overlooked the sea, and the wind there carried the faint sound of engines from the shipyards above. People from across the Alliance came to pay respect. Many brought gifts from their own worlds: stones, flowers, and small symbols of peace. After his death, Mira took command of the Terran fleet. Under her, humanity entered a new age. Exploration began once again. New colonies were established beyond the old war zones. The Alliance grew stronger, spreading ideals of cooperation and courage. Yet the silence around the outer borders grew darker. Explorers reported abandoned outposts and destroyed stations. Someone or something was moving in the shadows. The Dominion was not gone. They were only waiting. Mira knew it was only a matter of time before the call for help came again. Still, she did not let fear rule her. She continued Rion's dreams: strength through unity, peace through readiness. She made sure every Alliance world received Terran aid, training, and protection. And for every act of kindness, the galaxy remembered Earth a little more in time. Even worlds that had once mocked humanity began to speak of them with respect. Traders would say, "If your world is in danger, call for Earth." They always answer. It became more than reputation. It became hope. One night, as Mira stood alone on the command bridge of her new flagship Resolve, she looked at the stars and thought of Rion's words. "To stand in silence is not weakness," he had said once. "It is the strength that grows between storms." Below her, Earth glowed in the dark, peaceful and proud. The world that had survived the impossible now watched the stars again. Not with fear, but with readiness. The silent years had taught humanity patience, wisdom, and the power of rebuilding. The fires of war had forged not only soldiers but guardians of peace. And though the galaxy had forgotten many things, it would never forget this truth: when Earth stands, it stands for all. The stars beyond the Alliance borders had grown restless. Traders whispered about new fleets moving in the dark. Ships without markings that attacked colonies and vanished before help could arrive. Many believed it was only pirates. Others feared something far worse. Mira, now admiral of the Terran fleet, listened carefully to every report that came across her desk. She had seen enough wars to recognize the signs of something organized. The attacks were not random. Each target was near important trade routes or communication stations. Someone was cutting the outer rim off from the core worlds for years. Mira had tried to keep peace through patience and strength. She believed that Earth's power was not in its weapons, but in its unity and memory. But one morning, as the fleet command met in orbit above Earth, a message came that changed everything. It was a distress call, weak and filled with static. The signal came from Thren, a small green world far beyond the Alliance's protected space. The message was short, but its meaning was clear. This is Governor Halen of Thren. We are under attack. Enemy ships identified as Vrax Dominion. They are burning our cities. We need help. Please, anyone answer? When the message ended, the command room fell silent. The Vrax Dominion was a splinter group from the old Dominion Empire that had once attacked Earth. Many had thought they were destroyed long ago. Yet now they had returned, stronger and more ruthless. One of the officers said quietly, "Admiral Thren is outside our defense zone. If we move the fleet that far, we risk leaving our own colonies open." Mira looked at the faces around her. When Earth was under fire, who came to help us? She asked. No one answered. Everyone knew the truth. No one had come. Mira's voice grew firm. Thren stood with us when the Dominion invaded. They gave shelter to our people. They sent food and medicine when we were dying. We owe them. If we turn away now, what kind of world will we become? The room filled with quiet agreement. The council voted, and within the hour, orders were given. The Terran fleet would move. Across the docks, engines roared to life. The great ships of Earth rose from their berths, silver and blue, their hulls carrying the scars of old wars. Civilians gathered to watch as the fleet prepared to jump. Children waved flags and shouted the same words their grandparents once did: hold the line. Do not fall. The flagship Resolve led the way. Mira stood on the bridge, her eyes steady. Plot a course to Thren, she said. All fleets engaged jump drive. As space folded and the stars blurred into streaks of light, Mira thought of Rion and his words about standing for what is right, not for what is easy. She hoped she was making the right choice. The journey to Thren took days. During that time, Mira read every report she could find. The Vrax Dominion had taken over 3 systems already. They enslaved survivors and stripped planets for resources. They called themselves the new rulers of the galaxy. Mira had seen this kind of pride before, and she knew how dangerous it was. When the Terran fleet arrived, Thren was burning. From orbit, they could see cities in flames and black smoke rising through the clouds. The enemy fleet hung above the planet, massive and silent, their ships shaped like blades. Mira gave the order. All ships battle formation. Defend Thren. The Terran ships spread out, their shields bright against the darkness. The first wave of Vrax fighters came fast, their movements sharp and disciplined. But the humans had fought enemies like them before. The battle began with thunder. The sky around Thren turned into a storm of light. Missiles streaked through space, and beams crossed in every direction. The Terran fleet moved as one, protecting the planet below. Mira's voice echoed across the comms, calm and steady. Do not chase them. Hold the line. Protect the world. Inside the Resolve, crew members worked quickly, shouting updates. Enemy cruisers closing from the right flank. Counterfire with Guardian Squadron, Mira said. Shields holding at 70%. Maintain pressure. Do not let them through. The Vrax ships were powerful, but they lacked something humanity had mastered: unity. Each human ship fought not alone, but as part of a living wall. When one was hit, others moved to cover it. When one fell, the rest fought harder, down on the planet. The people of Thren looked to the sky and saw hope for the first time in weeks. They saw ships with the blue emblem of Earth, fighting for them with fire and courage. Governor Halen sent a message to the fleet. "We never forgot what Earth did for us." "We are honored you came," Mira replied. "We do not abandon friends." Hours passed and the battle grew fierce. Both sides suffered losses. The Terran ships were outnumbered, but their tactics were sharp. Myra's flagship moved through the chaos like a blade of light. Every time the enemy tried to break their line, the resolve was there to block them. When the largest Vrax battleship began descending toward Thren's capital city, Mira made a choice. "Target that ship's engines," she ordered. "All power to main cannons." Her officers hesitated. "Admiral, if we use that much power, our shields will drop." "I know." "Fire anyway." The Resolve's main gun charged, glowing brighter than the sun. The blast struck the enemy battleship's engines, cutting it in half. The explosion spread across the sky, shaking the clouds below, but the Resolve was hit too. Energy surges ran through the hull, lights flickered, and alarms screamed. Mira gripped the railing but did not move. "Damage report. Main shield offline. Engines at half. Casualties in the lower decks," a crew member said. Mira nodded. "Keep firing." Outside, the rest of the fleet saw the Resolve take the hit and redoubled their effort. One by one, the Vrax ships began to fall back. Their formation broke under the constant pressure. The humans did not chase them. They stayed between the enemy and the world below, just as Mira had ordered. At last, the Vrax fleet began to retreat. The sky cleared slowly, leaving only drifting wreckage and the faint glow of burning ships. When silence returned, Mira closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of Rian and the long years of peace they had fought to protect. She whispered, "We did it again." But she knew it was not over. The Vrax would not forget this defeat. After the battle, Mira led a small landing team to Thren. The air was thick with smoke, but the people were alive. They cheered when they saw her. Children ran through the streets, waving small flags of Earth. Some of the old veterans who had once fought beside. Rian came forward and saluted her. Governor Halen met Mira near the ruined council building. "You came when no one else did," he said. "You could have stayed safe behind your walls, but you came." Mira smiled faintly. "Earth remembers those who stood with us. We will always come." For days, the Terran fleet stayed in orbit, helping with rescue efforts and repairs. They shared medicine, food, and engineers. Every soldier helped, from the highest officer to the newest recruit. It was not only a victory of war, but a victory of compassion. When the news of Earth's aid reached the rest of the galaxy, the reaction was powerful. Worlds that had once doubted humanity began to speak of them with respect again. The message spread fast. Earth answered the call. In the halls of the Vrax Dominion, their leaders raged. They could not understand how such a small fleet had broken their attack. They called the humans reckless and dangerous. Some among them whispered that it would be better to make peace with Earth than to face them again. But the younger commanders wanted revenge. They promised they would return with a fleet large enough to burn every Terran world. Mira knew it too. As she stood on the bridge of her ship once more, looking down at Thren's recovering cities, she felt both pride and concern. Humanity had shown the galaxy again who they were, but every act of courage came with a cost. She turned to her crew. "This victory belongs to all of us," she said. "But remember, peace is never free. We must protect it, not only with our weapons, but with our honor." The crew nodded. They understood. As the fleet prepared to leave, the people of Thren gathered in the streets, raising lights toward the sky. The entire planet glowed in the darkness, a sea of shining points. From orbit, it looked like a second constellation. Mira watched from the bridge as the light grew brighter. "Look at that," said one officer quietly. "They are thanking us." Mira nodded. "Yes, and we will never forget them either." The Terran fleet turned toward home, engines bright against the black. Behind them, Thren's people sang songs of Earth. Songs that would spread from planet to planet, reminding all who heard them that humanity still stood for hope far away. Deep in the uncharted regions, the Vrax Dominion began to gather again. Their leaders spoke of revenge and conquest. But others whispered another truth: humans were not to be taken lightly. The battle for Thren was over. But a new chapter in galactic history had begun, and through it all, the legend grew stronger. When Earth answers a call for help, the stars themselves take notice. The stars around Thren burned like silver eyes as the human fleet arrived. Thousands of ships came out of warp space, their engines glowing blue against the darkness. The sight filled the night sky of Thren. For many who watched from the planet's surface, it was like seeing hope return after a long winter. The people of Thren had been under attack for weeks. Their cities were falling, and the Vrax Dominion fleet covered their skies like a shadow. The Threnians had called for help many times, but no one came. Every message they sent to the galactic powers was ignored. But one message had reached Earth. Humanity remembered the kindness of Thren during their own dark years. And when the call for help came, they did not wait. Commander Mira stood on the bridge of the flagship Solar Spear. Her eyes were calm but sharp. She was young, but her blood carried the spirit of her grandfather Rian, the hero of Earth's last defense. Around her, officers worked quietly. Every sound on the bridge was measured and steady. Humanity had learned long ago that in war, silence and focus saved lives. "Commander," said her second officer, a man named Duran, "the Vrax fleet is spreading in formation. They do not believe we can match their numbers." Mira looked at the screen where enemy ships appeared as red lights. The Vrax ships were larger and heavily armed, but they moved without order. "They think we are weak," she said. "Let them think so. It will make their fall easier." Darren nodded and turned to give orders. Human ships began to take position, forming 3 long lines that curved around Thren's orbit. Fighters launched from carriers, their wings folding as they entered combat mode. Each pilot whispered a small phrase before flying out. It was an old Terran saying, simple but strong for Earth. For all who stand with her below, the people of Thren watched as fire trails appeared in the sky. The battle had begun. The Vrax fleet opened fire first. Red beams flashed through space, striking against human shields. The first hits were heavy, but the humans held their line. Myra's voice came over the fleet's channel, clear and steady. "Hold your ground. Do not break formation. Focus fire on their lead ships." The reply came with the force of a storm. Dozens of human ships fired together, their blue beams cutting through the enemy's front lines. One Vrax cruiser exploded, then another. The sky lit up with fire and wreckage. The Vrax commander,
Ow!
an old warlord named Zor, sat in his dark throne room aboard the flagship Fraction. His laughter filled the room. "Humans," he said, "still fighting with courage but no sense. They cannot stand against us." But as he spoke, another of his ships was torn apart by a precise volley. His officers looked at him with worry. The humans were not moving randomly. They fought like a single being, every move planned, every strike made with purpose. On the Solar Spear, Mira gave new orders. Deploy the Iron Wings. Cut their flank before they regroup. Hundreds of small human ships broke from the main line and dove toward the enemy's side. Their engines glowed bright white as they weaved through enemy fire. The Vrax tried to stop them, but the human pilots moved too fast, their training perfect. Within minutes, the enemy's side formation was broken. One of the human pilots, a young man named Aaron, flew his fighter close to the enemy battleship. His voice was calm as he spoke into the com. Target locked. Firing now, his torpedoes struck the engine of the battleship. The explosion lit up space like a rising sun. The people of Thren cheered as they saw the light. For the first time in weeks, they felt hope. The human fleet was turning the tide. Still, the Variks were not finished. Zor ordered all his heavy ships to focus on the human flagship. "Break their command," he shouted. "Crush their leader, and the rest will fall." Massive beams of red light shot toward the Solar Spear. Mira watched calmly as the shields began to weaken. The ship shook under the assault, and sparks filled the bridge. "Commander's shields are at 40%, Darren reported. "Keep steady," Mira said. "Bring the second fleet in front." Take the hit and return fire. No ship leaves another behind. The Second Fleet moved forward without hesitation. They took the blows meant for their flagship and answered with full force. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield. The Vraks began to lose control of their lines. Mira stood firm. Her hands rested on the console, her voice steady as she gave each command. She remembered her grandfather's words, spoken long ago. Courage is not loud. It is the voice that stays calm when fear screams. Hours passed. The sky above Thren became a storm of light. Ships burned, debris floated, and silence came and went between bursts of fire. Human crews worked tirelessly, patching systems and saving wounded. No one spoke of retreat. Not once. Finally, a message came from one of the Vrex captains. His voice was filled with fear. We request to withdraw. Our command is broken. Myra did not smile. She only said, then go. Take your ships and leave Thren forever. The Vrak ships began to pull back, their engines flaring as they fled into deep space. The few that remained were surrounded and disabled. The battle was over. Cheers filled every human ship. The people of Thren watched from their cities, tears falling as they saw the human fleet holding strong in their skies. Across the planet, lights were turned on, fires were put out, children were lifted in joy. Mira looked out the window of the solar sphere at the blue-green world below. Thren is safe, she said softly. Grandfather would be proud. Darren stood beside her. The galaxy will remember this day. They will remember that when Thren called, Earth came. Otto nodded. Let them remember not our power, but our promise. Later, the human fleet landed on Thren to help rebuild what had been lost. Soldiers carried food and medicine, engineers repaired power systems, and doctors treated the wounded. The Threnian leader, a woman named Sira, met Mira on the city's main square. She bowed deeply. You came for us when no one else would, she said. Mira shook her head. You stood with us once, when others would not. We only returned the kindness. Sira looked up with tears in her eyes. Then may the stars themselves carry your name. Humanity will never be forgotten. As the sun set on Thren, the human ships shone like silver against the orange sky. For the first time in many years, the galaxy watched a story of unity instead of conquest. Messages of thanks began to spread from planet to planet. Some were small words of respect. Others were great songs written in the ancient tongues. Mira sat alone in her command room that night, listening to the reports. She knew this victory would echo across the galaxy, but she also knew it came with a price. Many human lives had been lost in the fight. She closed her eyes and whispered softly, May they rest among the stars they defended. Above the world of Thren, the fleet remained in orbit for 3 more days. They helped repair, they comforted, and they rebuilt. When the time came to leave, the people of Thren stood together and watched the ships rise into the sky. The engines flared blue, painting the clouds with light. Every child on Thren would grow up remembering that sight. And every old soldier who once lost hope now carried faith again. Humanity did not seek glory that day. They only did what was right. And as the solar sphere disappeared into the dark of space, one truth became clear to every living being who witnessed that battle. The battle for Thren had ended, but the story was only beginning. Across the galaxy, news of Earth's courage spread faster than light. Traders, explorers, and messengers carried the tale from system to system. Some told it as a story of ships and weapons, others as a story of hope and kindness. But everyone agreed on one truth: humans would always stand for those in need. On Thren. The streets were alive with celebration. Fires had been put out, buildings repaired, and the people danced beneath the stars. They lit lanterns and released them into the sky, each one carrying a small message of thanks to the people of Earth. Children ran through the streets, waving flags painted with Earth's emblem. Adults whispered stories of the humans who had fought above them, never once retreating. Myra stood on the bridge of the solar sphere, watching the glowing lights float into the night. Beside her, Commander Daron spoke quietly. They will never forget this, will they? Mira shook her head. No, and neither will we. This is the reason we fight, not for medals or power, but to protect what is right. We stood with them because they stood with us once. While humans worked to restore Thren, messages began to arrive from other worlds. Systems that had once ignored Earth now sent ships filled with gifts and gratitude. Scholars, engineers, and healers offered their talents in honor of humanity. Some brought technology that had never been seen before. Others offered stories, poems, and songs. Each gift carried a single idea: Earth remembers and Earth acts. The news reached the far edges of the galaxy, where small colonies huddled in fear of the Vrak's dominion. On these planets, children listened to their elders speak of the human fleet that had crossed the stars to save Thren. Soldiers practiced tactics learned from human manuals. Leaders spoke of courage and unity, and the words inspired hope that had been lost. Back on Earth, Mira returned with her fleet, carrying survivors and gifts. The cities that had once been scars of war now welcomed heroes. Streets were filled with banners. Citizens lined every avenue, clapping and cheering for the fleet that had risked everything to help a distant world. Schools paused, children waved, and families brought flowers to honor the sailors. Admiral Mira walked among her people. She did not speak of glory or victory. She only said, "We do what is right. We protect those who need us. That is the duty of humanity." Meanwhile, the people of Thren sent their own ambassadors to Earth. They arrived with gifts, knowledge, and messages of deep gratitude. Among them was Governor Halen, who had survived the attacks. Standing before the leaders of Earth, he said, "We will never forget your courage. You saved our people, our homes, and our lives. Humanity has shown us what it means to be true friends." Earth accepted the gifts humbly. The leaders knew that their actions were not meant for reward. But the galaxy had begun to take notice. In council halls and marketplaces, on distant planets and hidden stations, the story of humanity's deeds spread like wildfire. Soon, other worlds sent their own messages. They spoke of ancient debts, old alliances, and forgotten kindnesses. Some came with materials to strengthen Earth's defenses. Others offered cultural knowledge and skills. Every world seemed to agree on one thing: humanity could be trusted, humanity could be counted on, and humanity would never forget its friends. The news traveled even to the remnants of the Vrak's dominion. Their leaders watched with anger and disbelief. How could a species so young command respect across the galaxy? How could humans inspire hope where others only inspired fear? The Vraks began to realize that this was not only a story of war, it was a story of values, of courage, and of honor that could not be defeated by ships or weapons alone. On Thren, children now ran freely through rebuilt streets. They told one another stories of the human fleet, and they carried the lessons learned from that battle: courage, sacrifice, and unity. Every year they celebrated the day the humans came. Lanterns filled the night sky, and songs were sung to honor those who had stood with them when no one else would. Back on Earth, Mira looked out at the stars from the command deck of the Resolve. Thousands of lights sparkled across the galaxy, and she knew they represented lives touched by her people's actions. She turned to her officers and said, "The galaxy is beginning to understand what we have always known. When humanity stands for what is right, it shakes not only planets but hearts." Her officers nodded. The words felt true. It was not only victory in battle that mattered, but the example set for every life touched. Humanity's courage became a legend, told in quiet voices, in songs, and in tales passed from generation to generation. Across the Alliance, other worlds began to act differently. When a colony requested help, the first thought was of Earth. Traders, scientists, and peacekeepers began to reach out more quickly, inspired by the example set by humans. Systems that had once been afraid of war now looked at courage as a form of leadership. The effects spread faster than anyone had imagined. New alliances formed. Small colonies that had been oppressed joined together. Entire sectors of space began to communicate, trade, and defend one another. Humanity's actions on Thren had sparked something that no weapon ever could: galaxy united by hope. On the ships of the Terran fleet, sailors told stories of the Battle of Thren. They spoke of bravery, teamwork, and the decision to protect life even when danger was greatest. Every officer carried the story as a reminder. Fight not for conquest. Fight for what is right. Mira herself received letters and gifts from every world she had helped. A child on a distant colony sent a small model of a Terran starship carved from wood and painted with care. An elder on another planet wrote a poem about the courage of humans. Each token was small, yet it carried a meaning larger than any weapon. The leaders of Earth held a ceremony for all the heroes who had served in the battle. Families were invited. Survivors were honored. Statues were unveiled in cities across the world. But it was not pride that filled the hearts of those present. It was humility. Humanity knew that their actions were not done for reward, but for honor, for life, and for friendship, even in the far reaches of the galaxy. Systems that had once doubted humans began to build monuments in their own cities. Names of human heroes were carved in stone, and inscriptions told the story of courage and loyalty. Across stars and light years, humanity's reputation grew not as conquerors, but as guardians. Mira, standing on Earth's capital balcony, watched the crowd below. Children waved and shouted, adults cheered, and the sky was filled with flying banners. She thought of Thren, of the people she had protected, and of Rian. Everything they had done, everything they had taught, had led to this moment. Humans will be remembered, she whispered to herself. Not because of weapons, not because of power, but because we act when it is right. Back on Thren, Governor Halen sent one last message before returning to his people. It was simple, but carried great weight. To all of humanity, thank you. You have changed our world, and in doing so, you have changed the galaxy. Your courage will never be forgotten. May your example shine for all time. The message was shared across every network, reaching billions, across planets and colonies. Beings of every kind paused to read it, to feel its meaning. And across the galaxy, the legend of Earth grew. For humans, it was not a story of fame or glory. It was a story of duty, of honor, and of keeping promises. They had stood with Thren when no one else would. They had acted without hesitation, guided by courage and compassion. And in return, the galaxy had remembered them, and it would never forget again. Children on Earth grew up knowing the story. They learned that being brave was not only standing against an enemy, but standing for what is right. Soldiers carried the lessons into new missions. Leaders carried the lessons into council chambers. And families whispered the tales to each other at night, reminding the next generation that humanity's strength was not in weapons alone, but in the heart that guided them. And so, the galaxy learned a truth that would echo for generations. To stand with Earth is never forgotten. Every life saved, every world protected, every act of courage and kindness became part of a legacy larger than any single planet. The stars themselves seemed to acknowledge it. Systems once dark with fear now glimmered with hope. Allies spoke openly of their gratitude. Even enemies whispered warnings in respect. Humanity had changed the galaxy, not through fear, not through war, but through courage, loyalty. In the simple act of standing beside those who could not stand alone, Mira looked out. One last time from the balcony of the capital. The lights of Earth shone beneath her, steady and bright. The stars above sparkled with the stories of countless lives touched, and she knew that the future, though uncertain, would carry the memory of this moment across the galaxy, because Earth had stood, and in standing, it had reminded all beings, everywhere, of a truth too strong to ignore. Courage, honor, and kindness travel farther than any fleet, reach higher than any star, and are remembered forever. And so, the galaxy began to speak a single name with respect, gratitude, and awe - Earth. The thanks of the galaxy had shaken worlds. It had changed systems. It had reminded everyone that those who stand for others will never be forgotten.